My name is Dr. Kerstin. I am an Associate Professor at the Bartlett School of Architecture at University College London. I am an architect by training, but I've actually never built a house. What I'm interested in are the social implications of architecture. So what do buildings do to people? In my career, I look at different types of buildings, and my main interest is really from a sociological point of view, but also with a very scientific lens. So I'm interested in the mechanisms behind the world, how things work, and what influences what. And that's why I've also founded a business, which is called Brainy Birds. And at Brainy Birds, we are interested in introducing scientific thinking into workplace design. That means moving away from a lot of the fads and fashions and trends in the workplace community and apply more data-driven principles to understand what is really going on and then make recommendations based on best knowledge. When we think of buildings as social entities, thinking of how buildings do things to people, we can think of two mechanisms, two things that buildings do. On the one hand, buildings are there to bring people together, and on the other hand, buildings can keep people apart. Bringing people together, buildings channel our movement flows, they make people encounter each other, meet each other in the corridor, chance encounters. All of those are very important. On the other hand, buildings can keep people apart. If you think, for example, of a courtroom, the Royal Courts of Justice, for example, is designed in a way that it enables different groups of people to move through the building without casually bumping into each other, because you don't want that. You want people to meet in the courtroom, where then you have highly ritualized proceedings. Now, every building needs both elements of bringing people together and keeping people apart. And it is architects who take those decisions. Architects design a wall. And if you have a wall is a wall is a wall. It blocks visibility, it blocks movement, it keeps people apart. So it is at the essence of architectural decisions that then has these impacts on how people can behave in buildings. In workplaces, we typically need both. We need people to come together, for example, to collaborate, but we also need people to be kept apart so that you can take a phone call, you can concentrate, get some work done, get your head down. In normal times, we would speak of workplaces, of offices, mainly with a focus on bringing people together, on unplanned encounters, on chance meetings, on shared moments, having a cup of tea or coffee together, and to really enforce the social aspects of these workplaces. Now, with the COVID-19 pandemic, office life has changed massively, alongside all other changes in our lives. It's a very big, unasked for experiment. No scientist has designed this experiment. It just happened, and we all had to adjust. Actually, we've all adjusted quite well. We've made it work somehow. The working from home, the having multiple people in one household, the being in small places, all of that we've made work. However, there are a lot of things that we're losing. Recent surveys have shed a light on that topic. There was one survey by Spatial architects with around 1,200 respondents, and they found that actually 47% of people are happier working from home than they were coming to the office. Another survey done by Leesman with more than 10,000 replies, and they are still collecting data, has found that on average, the average working from home setup is more productive than the average office. What is the problem then? The problem lies in the detail, and on average that masks a lot of things that go underneath the surface. How did we make it work? What are those details? We have made working from home work by planning like mad, all of us. We've scheduled meetings, we've planned all those meetings in advance, we've circulated documents, And then all of those planned meetings kind of go well because we can use video conferencing softwares. However, there are certain things that really get lost in all of this planning. And of course, that's the spontaneity, the unplanned encounters, the things that you really can't plan for. So what we've lost in the working from home experiment during COVID-19 is the unplanned encounters. Those unplanned encounters are really quite important for work processes. Research has found that both creativity and innovation are impacted by unplanned encounters. Good ideas often don't come from your small immediate team, but from others outside of your immediate team. And if you don't meet those people, and often it wouldn't be seen as so important to schedule a meeting with them, then there's a whole load of things that is getting lost. That's particularly important for more junior people, for people who have newly started in organizations, also because they don't really have a grip on organizational culture, on how do things work here, on who would I ask for what. Access to senior people gets lost because a lot of the times their diaries and inboxes are really busy, so catching someone as they go in and out of a meeting room to just quickly ask a question, get sign off on a report, all of those things are much more complicated. There are two other things we've lost. One of them is a real sense of community, a sense of belonging. All I can see now is my local task. There's something I do and I get my head down and I do it, or I spend on video calls. But getting a feeling of my organization and the things that we do as a whole organization, that sense of belonging, sense of community, all of that just shrinks and we get very little sense of that. And possibly that's one of the reasons why the weekly clapping for the NHS, it's one of our few moments of solidarity with others, of kind of feeling that we're part of something bigger. And that is not only dampening the mood, it also makes interactions and collaborations much more difficult. So it has a serious impact on working processes. Final point, the other thing we lose, and that's a very interesting one, it has to do with psychology, and that is the cognitive scaffold. So any setting, any physical place gives us a sense of how we behave. We walk into a cathedral and we immediately know how to behave. We tone down our voices, we are quiet, we are respectful. The same with a library. We don't need anyone to say hush. We kind of know that this is what we do. And the same happens with our workplaces. We know where the tea points are. We know where to get a good coffee. We know how to get our lunch, who we pass by. We say hellos. So those kinds of cognitive scaffolds are all lost, and we find collaboration and getting in touch with people a lot harder. Now, we've come to the point where a lot of people are very eager to return to the office after weeks and months of working from home. Let's be clear, until a vaccine is found by scientists, we will have to live with restrictions and limitations. The most important one of these is distancing. I'm very keen to talk about physical distancing and not social distancing, because what we really need is social get-together, but to keep at safe physical distances. We need to rethink the office, and that's also a big chance. It's a big opportunity to challenge conventional wisdom and to think about what kind of offices, what kind of workplaces do we really want to have? And maybe it's not the same kind of office that we had before. Before we come to that, to the how could the office look in that transition period until a vaccine is found, one of the most important things for organizations is to keep flexible and to keep thinking, because the ground is shifting underneath our feet and there's a lot of things we still don't know about this virus, about how it's being transmitted, about how infectious it is. So while that science is being built, we will have to be patient and rethink and reflect of what we could do. The most important thing when we think about the office and coming back to the office is to rely on what the office does best. And it does best social interactions, sense of community, for people to connect with one another. So that's the focus of what we should be thinking about when we rethink the office. The other thing to keep in mind is that we don't want to get back to average offices. Remember, average offices scored lower than average working from home. We have to think about the best possible office experience. How can we provide workplaces that people really want to go back to? And in order to do that, we really need data. And that is not just relying on surveys of other people, but that's also collecting your own data and generating your own insight for your organization of what people need and require and what would make a great office for them. Finally, people might be wondering, what are some practical steps that each organization can do as they think about returning to the office? The first thing to keep in mind is to really take it slowly. If you can, from an organizational, economic point of view and a social point of view, just take it slowly. And we're still in a pandemic, there's still risks for infection, and if you can keep those low, that's the best way forward. When you think of coming back, you could think about what are the first people that need to come back. And that could be from a workflow point of view, from a materials point of view, those that really need to be in the office because they're working with special equipment, for example. Also those that have special needs, for example, working in really small homes. They might be really happy to move out and go outside. Likewise, there are other people who will be less keen to come back for whatever their reasons are, and that's very important to establish. Once we know who are the first people to come back, we might also want to think about shifts and rotas. Capacities will be very much reduced to, depending on office layout, probably around 20% if you have to keep distance. So with that 20%, it's worth thinking about two things. On the one hand, what is your layout? And to make the most of your layout, there's always things that people can do with layout. If there are, for example, multiple staircases, you could think about splitting upward and downward movement. You could think about creating loops in the workplace, so that minimizes the chance of encounter. Those kinds of things are things that everyone can do. I don't think it's the time just yet to do massive new office refurbishments or reorganizations. I've heard people say we should now all go back to cubicles, we all need walls between us. That's certainly not the right answer. The right answer would be see what's the right thing for your organization and to collect some data, and then to look at steps that can be taken in that transition period. But also in the longer term, we might want to think about the thing that we're missing. How can we replace that? So the get together of people, if you design those rotas and shifts of who comes back and who might still be working from home, think about mixing up departments. So don't stick everyone from one department into the same shift, because those ties within departments, there's very strong glue of a team, and they can do their planned encounters via video conferencing. But if you mix them up with other teams, that's what organizational innovation literature suggests is what we miss most. The final point, if we're coming back into the office, just really think about evaluating as you go along what kind of organization you want to be, what works for your people, and culture, sense of belonging, community. Those are all very important points, and those can be done via remote connection, but most importantly, when we come back to the workplace, focus on those. And another practical thing to be doing, for example, is to think about breakout spaces. So rather than shrinking them, is to really extending them, extending kitchen spaces where, for example, you could have two people standing at a distance and having a short conversation. So make those spaces available. After all, the office is our place for social encounter, and we should fight for it and get it back for all of us.